Okay, thanks, Linda. I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webinar. We decided that we were going to do I guess, a special edition, growing concerns, and kind of focus it on winter wheat. And I guess one of the main reasons is we were planning on doing a few meetings and going into the field and showing producers how things were kind of looking and going, but weather has kind of turned against us, and we came up with the idea of maybe having a webinar to go over some of the things that we were hoping to discuss in the field. And we added a few things, and one of the things we added was a report on what crops are doing in the States as well as worldwide and wheat. And we were lucky to get Bruce Burnett to come and talk to us today, so he'll be starting off the webinar today. Then we're lucky to have Pam Rocquigny here, who's going to talk a little bit about the winter wheat survival, and so for producers that have winter wheat in the ground, some of the things they should be looking for, and some of the things that they can do to increase the chances of that crop's potential. Then we're going to go into something a little bit different. We have a new hybrid fall rye that's being looked at in the province, and FP Genetics is here, and they're going to tell us a little bit about that variety. We have some trials of it in the province here. And then we're going to have some updates, an update on the winter wheat crop in the Southwest, and then I'm just going to touch a little bit on wheat street mosaic at the end. So as you can see, the schedule is fairly busy. It's going to run a little bit more than an hour today, so be prepared to hang on. And I guess with that, Linda, I think we should turn it over to Bruce. Bruce is from the Canadian Wheat Board, and he's going to talk to us about the winter wheat crop worldwide and the wheat crop worldwide.
Okay, here we go. Let me get organized here a little bit. Oops. There we go. So anyway, Elmer asked me to touch on what the global conditions are, especially for the wheat market. I do have some oilseed slides in here as well, because the markets have reacted, I think, rather positively in a way in terms of price side to some factors, not only here in Canada, but also globally. So we'll go through those factors, and naturally we focus a lot on the winter wheat prospects globally, because those are the crops that are entering the critical stages in most of the main growing areas. So as you can see here, we just have our chart of production this year, last year. Just like you to focus on the top number. Global wheat production year on year. We have it dropping this week to 694 million tons, but that's down only about 6 million tons from last year. So despite the fact that we're having an epic drought in parts of the southwestern U.S., global wheat production this year is going to be rather healthy. These numbers are fairly similar to the IGC numbers, International Grain Council numbers. They're using production closer to 700 million tons. And the USDA, of course, will see those results from USDA on Friday. So that's going to be a very significant market-moving report. Another number to focus on just basically is the U.S. HRW number, which is at the very bottom of the U.S. table. Currently, we're projecting a crop of 735 million bushels. That's about 9 million bushels below last year's production now. And last year's production was drought affected, so we're looking at two back-to-back crops in the U.S. Southern Plains where we have some very big difficulties. In other parts of the globe, though, it seems as if the weather conditions have been far better for growing winter wheat. So we're seeing some reasonably large production levels in Russia, Ukraine, European Union, China and India, although they're not on this chart. So basically, the main concern has been the area of the Dust Bowl. You probably recognize a chart from Ken Burns' documentary in the upper left. Boise City forecast for today. I pulled this down last night, 84 Fahrenheit and blowing dust. The picture to the right actually shows that's not fog, that's blowing dust in the Oklahoma Panhandle that caused a large collision amongst semis. So this is a very serious problem in the U.S. In terms of Oklahoma and Texas production, it's really, I would say, almost locked in now. No amount of rain in those areas would rescue the crop. In southern Kansas this week, we're approaching that same position on the crop calendar. Central and northern Kansas are the only areas that could possibly benefit from rain. So the market's deciding now that it's going to actually be able to that it has to pencil in a lower crop, and that's why we're seeing so much strength in the wheat market. Next slide, you take a look at the 30-day U.S. precipitation. I circled sort of the main growing areas in the southern plains. You can see less than 25% of normal precipitation over the last month from southern Kansas through Oklahoma and Texas. This circle would probably get about 95% of the wheat grown in the winter wheat growing in those three states, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. Conditions as we move further north, even in Nebraska, Colorado, through South Dakota, up into North Dakota and Montana are far different. We are expecting a larger production in winter wheat in all of those states this year because the growing conditions have been quite good. Should those conditions deteriorate, that would be even more bullish for the wheat market because virtually everyone is expecting above average yields from the northern portion of the growing area. If you take a look at the longer term 90-day precipitation, so in other words from February through May, through the beginning of May here, very, very low levels of precipitation. It's not concerning about dry winter precipitation in this region. It's like we are in Western Canada. It's the driest part of the growing season. But when they don't receive rains starting in late February through March into April and May, that's when you develop very, very significant problems with the crop. And this year what had happened is they received some good rains for establishment. The crops developed, and then we went into what was essentially a 30-style drought in the region. Another thing that's been affecting the markets is Vladimir Putin in Russia. Just to focus in on the Ukraine issues there, the market's building in a fair amount of risk premium. I would debate that the risk premium probably should be more well placed in corn rather than in wheat, because Ukraine is also a very major corn exporter and probably a much more significant player in the corn market globally. However, this is a continuing problem. We don't see any resolution to this issue throughout this growing season. There is a vested interest both in Russia and Ukraine to continue to export. So in terms of the practical interruption of exports, I don't think there's issues, but when you have a political situation like we have, it can be quite volatile, and that showed up this week. Odessa, which is a major port, had a very large skirmish. 40 people died in a building, which is not good, but certainly those types of actions would let the Russians move in to Ukraine or justify their movement into Ukraine, and that's something that I think we're going to have to live with in terms of risk. I don't see a resolution to this scenario here for the next while unless the Russians decide to take their foot off the gas. Speaking of that region, the crops are actually in reasonable shape. Ukraine, eastern Russia, or eastern Ukraine, central areas of Ukraine, which is where the bulk of their area is in good shape. The Russians are a little bit dry, especially over as you get into parts of the southern district further south, near Krasnodar, North Caucasus area, as well as up in the Volga Valley. The Volga dryness, though, I think is more positive because it is a mixed winter and spring wheat area, a little bit more like we would have in Manitoba. Another significant player globally winter wheat is the Chinese. They had a dry winter, which is not uncommon, but they have been pulling in some very large rains through April and the early part of May here. As we can see here from this chart, over 200% of normal through April. So the crop stabilized in pretty good condition. In fact, probably a little bit too wet now in those southern growing areas because that's where they grow most of their canola, is Hubei and Hunan regions. Europe has been dry, and again, this isn't Kansas Southern Plains dry in terms of magnitude, but certainly is impacting some of the areas that I have circled there. So parts of northern France into the Low Countries in Germany have been quite dry, and the market was concerned about it a bit. Take a look at last week's precipitation, though. We're starting to see rains move into the region. There's good rain forecast for this coming week. So that's a pretty good situation developing in Europe. I don't think the crop's impacted. There's an area that we would be concerned about. It is in Romania, Bulgaria, Bosnia, Serbia, those regions. They have been quite wet over the last week. We'd expect a lot of winter wheat diseases to be developing, and that is a major exporting area from Europe, especially into the Mediterranean basin. Another area that has picked up some good moisture, the chart's mislabeled, it should be April percent of normal, but is Australia. We have a developing El Nino in the Central Pacific, and that should result in a drier growing condition for eastern areas of Australia. But in terms of initial planting moisture, and again, they will be planting now in areas that receive these rains, it does look reasonably good. The market had been quite concerned about the growing conditions caused by the El Nino for Australia, but certainly to date it means that we're going to plant probably most of the canola, barley, and wheat in Australia under reasonable soil moisture conditions. The area I'd have most concern is up in the northern parts of New South Wales and southern areas of Queensland. Those areas have not picked up quite as much moisture, and those are the areas that are usually the first to develop drought conditions under an El Nino. Again, they're planting in the southern hemisphere, so the crops that they're planting now will be harvested, or will be going through winter dormancy and then into spring development starting in August, September period of time. If you take a look at our futures, wheat futures contracts for July, and again, the blue line's Minneapolis, the red line is Kansas City, and the green line is Chicago. You can see there's been quite a move upwards in the markets. Kansas City is now trading at a premium to Minneapolis, virtually through all the contract months. This is something that we feel will be likely a permanent feature of the futures market through this crop year until we hit 2015-16 production. The reason for this is that we have a combination of low stocks, in the U.S. with poor crop coming on a hard red winter. Spring wheat is looking at larger stalks, both on both sides of the border, but especially in Canada. And so the two markets will probably be trading opposite to what they would have normally traded in the past, just because of the way the circumstances have developed this year. Just to take a look at other oilseed contracts, you can see we've come off the bottom in canola and moved into a mid-range here. I would say that that's probably, again, there's a good chance that we'll see some pressure on the oilseed market side. World stocks of oilseeds are building right now, and we should see some pressure in the market, especially concerned about some lackluster demand in China. They've had some credit problems with their processors, and looks like they're slowing down in terms of their import pace on all oilseeds that they're crushing domestically. The soybean futures contract is quite a bit higher. It's basically, again, the situation in the U.S. is quite tight. Until we get to new crop months out in November, you don't see a lot of pressure on the soybean market itself. Again, it's one of those situations a lot like wheat. Domestically in the U.S., it's tight for soybeans. Globally, there's lots of soybeans around. So certainly there's big differences there in terms of how the situation has evolved. When you compare that with canola, canola stocks are quite high. And I'm going to go through the canola stocks as well as the stocks for all commodities in Western Canada here shortly. So in Western Canada, just an update, and again, in terms of our winter wheat crops, I'm interested to see some of the subsequent speakers on the survivability, but it looks like we've had reasonably good survivability this spring. Again, we'll probably be faced with the same conditions as last year, where we are going to be off to a slow start just because our heat units have not been up to par in April and early May here. So there won't be quite the distinctive time differential between winter wheat and spring wheat. But generally speaking, the crops did a good job of surviving what were pretty cold winter temperatures. If you take a look at the overall moisture situation in Western Canada, again, this is more general for spring wheat as well, not specific to winter wheat. We did have develop a fair deficit, and I would say there's a point in central Manitoba there, Winnipeg, that you could join up where we did have a moisture deficit from, let's say, Edmonton down Highway 16 into Yorkton area, and then an area in the Interlake north of Winnipeg as well, being drier than normal. During the growing season last year, we had plenty of rain across the south and some precipitation up the western side of the province in Manitoba. You take a look at the winter precipitation, it was almost exactly the opposite. We had heavier snowpacks up in the northern parts of the growing region of Western Canada and drier in the southern areas, especially southern Manitoba, southeastern Saskatchewan, and then out into southern Alberta. So from an overall point of view, I think that's good for starting soil moisture here. The areas that could have been extremely wet are not quite as wet as they could have been, and the areas in the north that needed the moisture have certainly got it. This is just a picture of the snowpack as of the 15th of March. You can see the heaviest snowpack stretched from sort of the Brandon area up through into central and northern Saskatchewan. That will hit a fair amount of the Saskatchewan winter wheat areas as well, although the extreme southeast did not pick up as much snow as further north. Moisture since then has been very good, especially in Saskatchewan, In Manitoba, we certainly have seen a trend where western Manitoba has received better rainfall amounts than rain and snow, I should say, than further east. There's no area on the prairies right now that we're terribly concerned about for starting soil moisture. The next graph just shows last week's precipitation up until Tuesday morning, or this morning, or yesterday morning, and you can see some fairly dry conditions across most of the northern and central prairies. So we're starting to see the drying process come off. We did have some planting delays in southern Alberta. Overall, in terms of our planting delays, and again, these are just more macro numbers, so in terms of all crops in Manitoba, there have been some plantings go on. It's just hard to hit the 1% mark. We see some starts to the progress in southwestern Saskatchewan, southern Alberta. That's where the bulk of the activity has been. We would expect that to improve over the coming week as we see areas dry out and warmer weather hopefully arrive. Just to take a look at our stock situation in Western Canada, especially on wheat, you can see the stock levels at the end of 2014-15 crop year are going to be exceptional. These don't include durum stocks, so this is spring wheat and winter wheat stocks. They're going to be the highest since 1994. So that was at the end of March. The carryouts at the end of the year are going to be quite large. Again, we'd have to go back into the 70s for the three major crops that we grow in Western Canada to hit those stock levels. So there's still a lot of product in Western Canada, and despite the fact the futures markets have rallied, although cash prices have rallied, certainly the basis levels continue to be quite wide. And we don't see this changing until we get into probably next year at this time. Here are the canola stocks. Again, large on-farm stocks of canola at the end of March and at record levels since 1980. Obviously, through the past history of growing canola on the prairies, this is a very high stocks level, again, going to result in wide basis levels. The only commodity without a lot of stocks relative to history, mostly because the commodity is smaller production now than it was 10 to 15 years ago, is barley. We have barley stocks that are at the end of March similar to what we saw in 2010. In terms of our exports, we have seen a pickup in exports here. Just the major grains that we export from from Canada, so total Canadian grain exports, we're now over 2 million tons above last year. Again, we would like to see this number by the end of July get to 3.5 to 4.5 million tons. That would help tighten the stocks down, and sort of what we had projected at the beginning of the export period in September. Hopefully we managed to make those levels. You can see it's not placed evenly amongst commodities. Wheat especially has seen stronger exports than the other commodities. Canola Crush, just to quickly go over this, we still are reasonably hopeful we'll hit a Canola Crush up from last year. The blue bars on this are the actuals to date. So you can see we're still at last year's pace, so the pace of crush has to pick up. We would expect the eastern crushers to start to crush a lot of canola here as we get Thunder Bay opened up and the ability of supplies to move into the eastern crushing belt. That's because of a combination of two things. One, the canola crush margin is rather attractive right now, and the number two is the fact that domestic North American soybean supplies are quite tight, and crushers that can swing between canola and soybeans will be moving back towards canola. Here's the seeding progress, Western Canada, at a very similar pace to last year. We don't anticipate this to be a big problem as long as we don't see a deterioration in the weather forecast. The 10-day weather forecast is reasonably positive for planting in Western Canada. In terms of our acreage projections right now, we are looking at Western Canadian areas, basically down on the cereal side, up on the oilseed side. We think that might change a bit here as we go into planting season. If we do see a good, clean planting window here, there could be the option for some farmers to flip more area into wheat, especially just because of the fact that prices have rallied so well to date. The only problem with that is the cash prices and the wide basis levels aren't providing a huge incentive to do this, so we still think that we'll probably settle in at these numbers where we see the lower cereals and the higher oilseed areas. In terms of production, year on year, we look for Western Canadian production to drop about 23% or so. Just take a look at the winter wheat line. We are expecting production to be up year on year at about 1.7 million tons. Last year was not a great year on the winter wheat yield side. We would anticipate yields are going to be better this year, and of course that's going to be should be a positive for the winter wheat crop. Again, we're seeing some fairly big drops in a lot of crops. If you take a look at the soybean line at the bottom, we are expecting now a very large increase in soybeans and flax this year for production. In terms of our wheat supply and demand, if you take a look at the 2013-14, this includes Durham as well, but basically you're looking at about a 12.5 million ton carry out for wheat, which is over double last year. Of that, Durham is only going to be about 2.3 million tons of that. So the bulk of it still is going to be spring and winter wheats. If we have the kind of production we expect it through all Canada next year, we are going to be still looking at a carry out close to 9.7 million tons. So again, our overall system, even if we do max out our exports, is still going to be quite a bit of wheat still hanging around, and those wide basis levels we would anticipate to continue into next year. Canola is much the same. Very large carryout this year, 3.2 million tons. If you take a look at the total supply for next year, it goes up slightly, and so we're looking at only a small drop in canola carryout next year, 3.8 million tons. So again, fairly large supplies of canola. And quickly on to barley carryouts, 2.6 million tons this year, and next year with very small production level historically and compared to last year, you're looking at a carryout of about 1.7 million tons, which is quite reasonable. So of the three commodities, barley is actually the one that has the most normal stock levels by the end of next year, according to our projections. If you take a look at our stocks levels, you can see again this huge number that we have back history-wise to 1980 in comparison to the stock levels we're going to have this year. Again, it's a result of the huge crop that we had. And next year the situation improves, but doesn't improve that much. So hopefully we have a good harvest this year. This is some winter wheat harvest just south of Winnipeg last year. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
I don't have any questions at this time, Bruce, but Lionel, did you have any?
Actually, yeah, just one there, Bruce. In talking to your guys out west in Saskatchewan, Alberta, have you heard any reports as to what the winter wheat crop is looking like there?
The winter wheat crop in Saskatchewan is looking pretty good right now. Some of the guys are still evaluating the stands because, especially in East Central areas, there's still not enough growth yet in some of the fields to make an adequate determination, but it does look like it survived. Southern Alberta crop looks reasonably good right now. They were worried about moisture levels, but they received some good rains and slash snow in April, and that's helped improve the situation there. Again, survivability had been pretty good in Southern Alberta from what we've been hearing from our field staff.
Yeah, and I guess the only other thing would be any concerns about, you did talk about it a little bit regarding maybe the potential for some delayed seeding in Manitoba, but we're definitely starting to get more and more people concerned about it. So when would you start getting concerned, or there were some dates you threw up there, but last year I know it was kind of the 14th, 15th when guys got going. Right now with the weather we're getting, and we might be even later than that.
Yeah, I think the forecast itself is looking reasonably good. I'd be far more concerned if there was a persistent wet, cold forecast right now. But it does look like the weather straightens out by the weekend out in parts of the western prairies. Even here it starts to dry off, and we get up into the mid-teens by next week. And although there's some rain in the forecast, it's not a persistent rain. The only area that has really, I guess you'd say, good potential is maybe the Red River Valley for some rains here early next week. But the remainder looks like some very scattered, showery kind of conditions at worst, at best. At worst, I mean, and mostly warm and dry. So I think, again, if that happens, we will still, we'll plant this crop late. We'll have all of the concerns about late planted crops. Are we going to get it, harvested before the frost, all of that type of thing? But certainly in terms of being able to plant it, right now it doesn't look like we're going to shut a window down on us yet. I can walk in here on Monday and see a deteriorating forecast, and then I'd get really concerned about it. But for here right now, I'm not that worried in terms of getting the bulk of the crop in Western Canada.
Okay, well, thanks, Bruce. That was nice to hear what kind of is going on in the rest of the world and see what kind of the cropping situation is there and some of the amounts of grain we have to deal with. So I guess with that, Linda, I think what we should do is go over to Pam and get her to do a presentation on managing the 2014 winter wheat crop that's coming up right now. So Pam, are you ready?
I am ready. Can you hear me?
Pam, I think you need be a little bit closer to your mic.
Okay. Is that better?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So thank you very much, Lionel and Elmer, for inviting me this morning to speak to your Growing Concerns webinar. And I guess I'll be talking about managing the 2014 winter wheat crop. So just a brief presentation outline for what I'll be covering this morning. And I assume if anybody has any questions that they'll type them in as we're going along, and Linda can fire them off to me at the end of the presentation. So I'll just go over just a quick introduction. I think Bruce, the previous presenter, has done a great job in terms of, kind of providing an overall summary. So I'll try to just provide some Manitoba perspective as I go through this. I'll provide some soil temperatures that we've recorded through our MAFRID Ag Weather Program, and specifically for some locations in southwest Manitoba. And then I'll go into kind of the meat of the presentation in terms of kind of our winter wheat management, looking at nitrogen, weed control, disease management, and just quickly touching on each of those, as I know we have a full morning. I know the farm production advisors out in your area could definitely be there to answer any more detailed questions that we have. So I'll kind of go over the highlights. And then, of course, we'll have wrap-up and questions. Linda, what do I want to do here?
You want to click the bottom one.
Bottom?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. So I took this from the website that you can see at the top. It's growwinterwheat.ca. So this is from the Western Winter Wheat Initiative, and I think this provides a pretty good snapshot in terms of kind of the calendar of what we see in terms of winter wheat production and decisions and management that a producer looks at throughout the growing season for winter wheat. And I think what we're going to focus, and of course kind of what I already alluded to in my presentation, is we're going to kind of focus on kind of the areas in the red box that I've just kind of thrown up there on the screen in terms of how to assess winter survival, and then kind of the management options in terms of nitrogen application, disease management, and of course weed management as well. Of course, I think everyone's probably seen this graph many a time, especially for those veteran winter wheat producers. For those that are new, this is just basically showing kind of changes in the cold hardiness of North Star winter wheat. So basically it's just kind of showing that the cold hardiness of your winter wheat plants that are kind of out there in the field are greatest in that kind of that late fall, early winter. So typically we don't normally see low temperatures causing damage to the winter wheat and kind of at this time. But then kind of as we kind of proceed until February, March, April, May, kind of see that the hardiness kind of occurring. So we can see that as we move into early spring and plants start to deharden and we kind of resume growth. If we do have, say, a cold snap, or we've lost our snow cover and we have a cold snap, more likely, more often than not, this is kind of where we'll typically say lose a winter wheat crop here in Manitoba. But overall, in terms of, and I think Bruce already kind of talked about it, overall I think we're expecting good winter survival for the winter wheat crop. I hate painting everything with a broad paintbrush, but there's always going to be isolated cases of winter injury or winter kill. But kind of the conditions that we've seen over the winter in terms of good snow cover, and we did have cold temperatures, but we had that good snow cover to protect that winter wheat crown from kind of those cold temperatures that we did see. I think possibly, and I think there's been a lot of talk about it in terms of perhaps a wild card this year is kind of those cold temperatures that we've seen this spring, kind of after the snow went away, and we're kind of waiting to see. The crop is just breaking dormancy. We're starting to see some growth in the winter wheat field now. So now is the time to get out there and kind of assess kind of the impact that possibly that cold spring could have had once the snow went away. But once again, overall, I think we're expecting overall good winter survival for a lot of the winter wheat acres that are out there. So in terms of some of the soil temperatures that we did see here in the southwest region, so this is soil temperature data from our Manitoba Agriculture Food Rural Development, so MAFRD's Ag Weather Program. The lines, the three really bold lines that you see on the bottom, the blue and the red and the green, that kind of represents that previous graph that I showed in terms of the red line kind of being, the average, so kind of what plants, the soil, minimum soil temperatures or temperatures that you would need for like a mid-hardiness perspective. Then we have the low hardiness in terms of a plant wasn't going into winter in terms of optimum conditions, kind of this would represent a low hardiness. And then we have a really good high hardiness in terms of really able to sustain or handle cold soil temperatures. So you can see I've plotted numerous locations. So we have Souris, Bois d'Ane, Hamiota, Minnedosa, Verdun, Wawanesa, Deloraine, Reston, and Melita. So you can see that we've plotted the soil temperatures. Just a few comments on the soil temperatures that we did use for this graph. We actually gather soil temperatures every 60 minutes, so every hour. So the data that we're graphing here is just a 24-hour average. So there will be, of course, variation between, nighttime versus daytime, but those are really typically minimal because if you have good snow cover, the variation between those temperatures shouldn't be that much. And the other thing to keep in mind is for our MAFRID ag weather stations, a lot of them, or all of them are actually not actually located in winter wheat fields, so they're located at the edge of fields. So it may not be entirely representative of what's going on in a winter wheat field. And of course, the soil temperature gathered is at a 5-centimeter depth, so it's maybe a little bit deeper than winter wheat. But having said that, I think it still provides some valuable information in terms of, temperatures that we did see, and if there's any, potential causes for concern in terms of those soil temperatures, reaching a level where it could, potentially have, caused winter injury or winter kill in the winter wheat. So of course you can see kind of in that early April timeframe, we did see a dip in those soil temperatures, where maybe for a few locations it was kind of approaching that kind of mid-hardiness line. But once again, overall, I think for the soil temperatures that we did see, once again, we're kind of expecting not to see, that having too much of an impact on, winter injury or winter kill. But of course, time will tell in terms of now the crop is resuming growth, and now we will be really able to go out there and assess kind of what really happened over the winter. I'd just like to throw this up here because for the first time, in a few years, we've actually provided Manitoba data for this winter cereal survival model. So we had 2 locations provided by our ag weather program. So we had one at Morris and one at Toulon. And then, of course, there was one located in Minto, Manitoba as well. So these were actually probes that were located in winter wheat fields. So this was probably a little bit better information in terms of what was actually occurring in the winter wheat fields in a few select locations in Manitoba. And I've thrown up a graph here for the Minto site for the 2013-14 season. And as you can see, we never really kind of hit that point or hit a time frame where we did see, in terms of just the data gathered up until about that mid-March time frame, where we did see possibly any damage or winter injury. So once again, this is a good source of information. We're hoping to continue it for the next year as well. So so definitely look for this for next year as well. So in terms of spring assessments, there's always those keeners that like to go out and kind of, provide an early gauge in terms of what the winter wheat and how it survived. These photos were taken by Jason Boach, who's with Grassroots Agronomics, and was sharing the information with myself. So this is where you actually go into the field, dig up a couple sods, bring them inside, let them warm up and let them grow, and in about 7 to 10 days, hopefully what you'll see, as you'll see on the bottom figure here, is that winter wheat resuming growth. So of course, this is kind of that early spring survival assessment. You've taken just a few sods out from the field just to kind of gauge, did it survive, did it not? Initial indications definitely indicate that, yeah, it looks like the winter wheat did survive in these areas. And there was good snow cover on these fields, so it was anticipated that it probably would survive quite well. Of course, we are now into the phase where, its spring survival assessment is actually going out into the field and assessing individual plants. And at this point, we're hoping that most of the plant has resumed growth, and we're seeing some good regrowth on the top. But of course, you always want to examine the crown as well for the development of those new white roots. As you can kind of see here, once again, photos taken by Jason. And if the crown appears white and healthy, new roots are developing, we can, safely assume that, the plant is, currently in good condition, and that's always what we kind of want to see as we approach springtime here. So in terms of plant stands, so once we're out there and once the plant's resumed and we're able to, take some plant stand counts, what we're kind of aiming for is always that 20 to 30 plants per square foot. That's kind of what we typically want to see in an optimum crop. Of course, everyone's probably seen this table many times as well. in terms of, data that was sourced back in 1999, where even with, a decreased plant stand, we definitely seen still good yield potential, in a winter wheat crop. So, don't be too hasty in terms of writing off a crop just due to poor plant stands. I know there is still good yield potential out there, and of course that's due largely in part to, winter wheat being able to tiller and to compensate for those poor plant stands. So, so this is something to keep in mind as you're out there and assessing stands, that it may not be what you're targeting in terms of an optimum, but decreased plant stands still have good yield potential. So in terms of early management, as we get into the weeks ahead, and probably for nitrogen application, it's going to be kind of right away. We always encourage early nitrogen application. We want to encourage that tillering of those plants out there in order to maximize yield potential. And this is particularly important, especially if you feel your stands a little bit compromised in terms of either just stand counts or that type of thing. Early application of nitrogen is critical to maximizing those yields. And probably a little, I guess, a little tidbit or whatever, is that actually that is a really short period between that 3-leaf and that 6-leaf stage, where the number of actual spikelets per spike is actually being determined. So this is where your yield potential is being determined, is at this, that short stage between the 3 and 6 leaves. So you're wanting to make sure you're providing all the optimal conditions for that crop as it's setting those number of spikelets per spike, so that you're turning, you're maximizing your yield potential right off the top. Of course, having said that, sometimes, as wet conditions or wet field conditions, or just spring in general, can sometimes not allow you to get out into the field as quickly as you want to. We've seen some data, and this is also back from 1999, some sites that John Hurd, our extension crop nutrition specialist here at the Crops Knowledge Center, had done. And we definitely did see, in terms of, say, a late April, a tillering growth stage versus a late May, where the plant was actually starting semi-elongation. We didn't see too much difference in terms of the yield potential versus those two nitrogen applications. But once again, this is really not what we recommend. The recommendation is always try to get out there as soon as you can. Once again, to kind of encourage that tillering, encourage that growth to start happening immediately, so that we're maximizing yields sooner than later. Just in terms of weed control, early control of weeds, once again, I think there's a theme here in terms of early management. And once again, this is important in, say, thinner or less competitive stands. So if you feel that, if there's lots of weeds out there, if you've got lots of growth of, spring annuals, scout for wild oats as well. There's a few products out there available for wild oats. There's lots of products out there for broadleaf control. So get out there, scout your fields, and especially if the stands are thinner, and get that weed control on early to help that crop along. In terms of disease management, we're definitely probably going to see a delay in growth this year, just because we're getting off to a later than normal start for the winter wheat crop. And of course, as we kind of push back, growth development, this could also lead to, an increased risk of rust. If it happens to blow in down from the States at a time, that can cause some damage. And of course, Fusarium headlight infection as well. Typically we always tend to say, or want to say, that, winter wheat can kind of escape that infection period for Fusarium headlight. But as we get into a delayed spring like we are now, it kind of pushes it back into that time frame, where we could see a risk of that Fusarium, causing potential damage. So this is something to keep in mind as we go into the season. So disease scouting will be particularly important this year as we go ahead. Just to note as well, just as we're talking about Fusarium, Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada and Mafford staff actually assist each other in terms of conducting a Fusarium headlight survey. We did one last year, and we're planning to do another one this year. So for those producers that are out there And wouldn't mind either Egg Canada staff or your Mafrit staff, your Crops Farm Production Advisor, to be out there doing some assessments. Please let them know. And I'm sure Lionel will have hopefully a sheet up at the end of the webinar kind of showing who those folks are and how to get in hold of him, in fact, if necessary, if you wanted to have your field surveyed for that winter wheat fusarium headlight survey. And just to let you know as well, we are planning to publish our fusarium headlight risk maps again. So this is just a screenshot from last year. All of our maps are available on our MapGrid website, and those will be up and going again this year as we kind of approach that anthesis time period where risk of infection could occur. So definitely look for those. We'll have those on our MapGrid website again. I heard Lionel say at the beginning that he was going to talk about leaf streak mosaic, so I'll skip over this slide. But I did want to just touch briefly on physiological leaf spots. And this is something that we've seen in 2012, and I always like to remind producers as we start into the growing season that this is something to keep an eye out for. Basically, physiological leaf spot is any leaf spotting that's not caused by a living organism. So it can't be attributed to a disease or to an insect. It's caused by other factors other than those. In winter wheat, we've seen that it does tend to be more susceptible than spring wheat. So this is why I've decided to mention it here at this webinar, just because it's something to keep an eye on for in your winter wheat crop. And we have noticed in the past that some varieties are more susceptible than others. So the variety CDC Falcon, which is grown on a number of acres here in Manitoba, is known to be very susceptible to physiological leaf spots. So it's something to keep in mind. And we'll often see the symptoms show up on the upper leaves. So basically, kind of what are you looking for? And unfortunately, this is kind of something that often gets confused with leaf spotting diseases such as, say, tan spot or septoria. So basically, symptoms can range kind of from small chlorotic flecks, kind of what you see here. And this is from a picture from a sample that was sent into the diagnostic lab in 2010. Or it can even be to larger lesions with darker centers. So this is once again a picture from Holly Dirksen from some winter wheat fields that we've seen in that 2012. Often the lesions will often be more like blocky or angular, and often they'll be defined by the leaf veins. Versus see something like a tan spot, that they tend to be more oval or elliptical, and often will have kind of like a yellow halo surrounding that necrotic or that dead spot. So obviously one of the issues that we do have is correctly identifying, is it physiological leaf spot, or is it one of your tan spots or your septoria. So basically what causes it, I've kind of already alluded to genetics. Some varieties are more susceptible to them than others. In the past, we've actually seen physiological leaf spot linked to chloride deficiencies as well. So this is not always the case, but it has been seen in the past. In 2012, what we kind of seen was it was almost caused, like it was almost sun damage, or kind of what you'd say like it was a sunburn. And that's why you'll often see it on the upper canopy. And we'll see it kind of after cool cloudy conditions, and then that's followed by sunny conditions. And then it can also be favored by cool, wet springs, so kind of what we're seeing right now. And then kind of an onset of, kind of hot, really good growing conditions that promote vigorous plant growth. So that's why I decided to mention it today, because I think we're kind of seeing some similar conditions that could result in that physiological leaf spot that we've seen in the past. So once again, kind of why it's important, because it kind of looks like our other leaf spotting diseases. And of course, the important thing is to hopefully prevent unnecessary fungicide applications, because fungicides are not going to control physiological leaf spot. So once again, we're kind of reiterating the importance of proper diagnosis, in terms of if you sent in a sample to our crop diagnostic lab in Winnipeg, it's kind of almost by, a default. If we can't find a pathogenic, organism, likely it's caused by, environment or growing conditions, so hence it would probably be physiological leaf spot. And then, of course, the other option, of course, is also tissue analysis that could provide information on chloride levels, as I kind of said before, it has been linked before in the past to chloride deficiency. So this is why I've kind of decided to mention it today in terms of, as growers and agronomists and you're heading out into the winter wheat fields this spring and going forward, it's a good idea to keep in mind that, the spots that you're seeing out there may not necessarily be from disease, but could be physiological leaf spots. So, proper diagnosis is the key. So just to quickly wrap up, I always say take the time to kind of assess your winter wheat crop. And, we've seen in the past where you've gone out and assessed it, looks good, and then you go back a week later and it doesn't look so good again. So I think it's important to remember to, keep scouting and to make sure that the plant's going forwards and, not backwards. It could be the case of where the plant maybe could have sustained a little bit of winter injury, and if growing conditions aren't the best, then we could see that plant going backwards. So definitely keep out there, keep out scouting. Of course, it's great to have a plan B in mind, but of course you don't want to use that plan B until you know you have a problem. So take that time to properly assess your stands. And of course, like I've said before, early management is key. Get your nitrogen out there early, control your weeds early. Get disease scouting, especially in a year like we're faced with this year in terms of later than normal development. So these are things to keep in mind. And of course, you don't want to really, talk about it, but if that stand is not worth saving, there's a few things to keep in mind. And in terms of rotation, disease, if you've applied your nitrogen, how is that going to impact your next crop that you're reseeding your terminated winter wheat to? And of course, if you have agri-insurance coverage, to make sure you contact your local mass agent before you do anything. And I just wanted to throw up just a few good resources of information. We have the cropchatter.com website, and we have lots of information up there in terms of winter wheat stand assessments or other winter wheat issues that you could have questions on that hopefully we'll have the answers up there for you. And of course, that Western Winter Wheat Initiative, which of course is collaboration between Bayer Crop Science, Richardson International, and Ducks Unlimited. It has lots of really good information on that website as well in terms of spring assessments and fertility, pest management. So that's also a good resource as well. And of course, our farm production advisors of the crops team as well as out there across Manitoba that could help you answer any questions you have in terms of your winter wheat production this season. So thank you very much. I've looked through that somewhat quickly, so if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
I don't have any questions at this point, Pam. Lionel, did you have any?
Yeah, actually I have one for you, Pam. Regarding the physiological leaf spot,
yeah.
How early in the growing season can it start to show up? Would it be, is something that producers might be seeing when they are spraying their herbicide, or is it more likely to show up when they're spraying their fungicide?
In 2012, it was kind of like in the beginning of June time frame. So kind of in 2012, guys had sprayed their herbicides, had sprayed their fungicides, and we were getting calls that fungicides weren't working. So that's kind of what led us to determine it was actually physiological leaf spotting. So it's kind of in that, June time frame, or, when the crop is, stem elongation, tillering out, that's kind of time frame that we're looking at.
Okay. Thanks, Pam. That was a good presentation on what we should be doing to manage the crop that's in the ground right now. I think what we'll do next is we're going to switch over to the presentation on the hybrid fall rye, and Ron Weik is going to be speaking regarding our from FP Genetics. And I know we tried to target winter wheat, but fall rye is an important crop in Manitoba. I think a lot of producers could get some advantages of growing it. So I thought it'd be a good area to talk about this new hybrid fall rye. So Ron, if you're there, you can take over.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in your program, and I'm going to move on to my presentation. I'll start off by giving you a little bit of background, move on to the variety attributes of the variety that we're talking about, a little bit about our commercialization plan, and then explain a little bit about seed production because the seed production for a hybrid rye is more like canola than it is like a cereal. So this particular variety, the breeding institution is a company called KWS Lockout from German. They have been testing rye in Western Canada for several years now. When you're working with a hybrid, the male and females, it's important that you get them flowering at the same time so that you get real good cross-pollination so that the certified seed provides excellent hybrid vigor. And so it took them some time to get that sorted out. But that notwithstanding, they have gotten to the point where under the new rules for variety registration, they were able to get 2 varieties supported for in-turn registration in 2014, and FP Genetics was fortunate enough to negotiate with them a seed production and multiplication agreement for one of them. So the variety attributes, and I'm not going to mention names because I'm in the process of completing the variety registration, and if we mention names, it can be considered advertising. I could get my wrist slapped. So the variety, and I expect to be through the registration process in about 6 weeks now. It does bring basis its performance in the rye co-op over 2 years. It brings high yield potential. It's 25% better than the currently available registered varieties in Canada. It's got short, strong straws, so it's about 4 to 5 inches shorter, and it shows a better lodging rating. The maturity is equal to existing varieties in Canada, and then unfortunately they don't do a lot of quality analysis in the co-op, but it's showing a significantly higher falling number. So one of the places where we're going to target this is more to the for reasons that I'll explain later, is more to the milling market than to the feed market. So as far as commercialization goes, we're putting together a detailed plan. It's in the final stages. There will be a small amount of certified seed available in the fall of 2014 for planting, and then a full-scale launch in 2015. The seed production for this is the parent seed is grown in Europe. Right now they're growing it in Italy among the vineyards to make sure they get good isolation from any other cereal variety. They ship over the parent seed, and it's planted as per the breeder's specification. So it's not difficult. They send you a mixture of 95% female, 5% male, and then another bag with just male. And so you seed a strip of the male around the outside for about 10 feet, and then just plant the rest of it, leave about another 10-foot strip and plant the rest of your seed production inside. It's the inside that's actually harvested for seed. The male is around the outside is destroyed after it's done flowering. We're going to find, this gets into why we're going to need to target the milling market. Rye acres in Western Canada have been dropping. They've dropped a lot. And, they're probably smaller than sunflower acres now. So a lot of that has to do, of course, with the fact that the yield hasn't been maybe as good as it could be, because rye has traditionally been planted on usually the poorest land. It's kind of like it's the equivalent of oats except for a fall-seeded crop. This variety offers real good yield potential, but it's going to need to be managed in order to make it perform. So it's going to have to be seeded on good land. It's going to have nitrogen and it's going to need a seed treatment. It's going to need the pesticides and fungicides as conditions warrant when it's coming out of the ground, hopefully before this time of year in future. And the seed price is going to reflect both the cost of producing the seed, which is a lot higher than for conventional rye, and also the value that it brings. And so there may, I'm going to tell you up front, be a little bit of sticker shock when this first comes to market. We're not in a position at the moment, as I said, we're still finalizing the marketing program, but you know, expect the prices are going to be similar to what happened with canola prices, for those of you that are old enough to remember, when we moved from open pollinated varieties to hybrids. So basically that's you know, a quick synopsis of the hybrid rye. Linda, I'd be very pleased to answer any questions right at this time.
I don't have any questions right now. Lionel, did you have anything?
Yeah, actually, one question is sometimes, or a lot of times, we face ergot issues with rye in growing here. Has there been any work done regarding ergot with this variety?
Yeah, unfortunately, Lionel, its propensity to be susceptible to ergot is about the same as the existing varieties. So I think it's going to be important to manage it by, in particular, cutting, you know, grass off on the headlands before it starts flowering.
Okay, I do have a question here.
And if there are no other questions,
I do have a question here. Is it specific for a malt industry? Any reason to grow it as feed?
I'm sorry.
Okay, it says,
Could
is it specific for the malt industry, or is there any reason to grow it as a feed?
Well, it can be used as a feed. Certainly in Europe, they have developed you know, a fairly robust market using rye in particularly cattle and hog rations. It generally, though, when they say malt, I guess you know, they're talking about targeting the distilling market, which oddly enough in Canada, like our rye whiskey, doesn't necessarily have to be made from rye. In the U.S., you know, there's a requirement that at least half of your the product that you're distilling has to be rye. The market here, I think, that we want to target is the milling market, because it's generally higher value, and you know, we've got a commodity with a relatively high falling number, so you know, we think that we should you know, probably direct our attention to developing those markets, because that gives the growers a better return. As I mentioned earlier, you know, the seed costs are going to be higher. The management of this is probably going to be such that the input costs are going to be higher, and so we've got to get a higher return out of the market to make it interesting for growers to produce.
Okay, well, thanks. That was real good information regarding the new variety and you know, the potential for it in Manitoba. And I really think there is some potential in the Southwest here for rye. We always got some producers that are growing it, so I think that's definitely something we should be looking into. So we want to hear more from this variety in the future. And I think they are doing a fair bit of work with Ducks Unlimited regarding this variety as well. So I think we'll probably hear a little bit more in the future about it as we look through some of the work that Ducks is doing as well. So with that, I think what we'll do now is we'll switch over to Elmer, Linda, and Elmer's got a presentation on the update of the winter wheat crop in southwestern Manitoba here. So take it away, Elmer.
Okay, so everybody can hear me fine?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Lionel. So we thought we'd put together a bit of an update as to what's happening with the winter wheat crop in both the Southwest and South Parkland region. And I think from this photo here, you can see that it's probably pretty representative of a lot of winter wheat fields in the area. We see it starting to green up from the road. So every indication, on a drive-by anyways would be that the crop is looking okay and probably survived the winter in good shape. I think one of the reasons why the crop is looking reasonably well at this point is we've had relatively ideal conditions for winter wheat to break dormancy. We've had a very gradual warming period under very moist soil conditions. And often when we find we lose winter wheat crops is when we get rapid warming, dries the topsoil up, so the top 4 to 6 inches of soil gets dried out, and then we see a severe temperature reversal followed by a hard frost. And when we get those types of conditions, we can often see the winter wheat crop during this period. And I think a lot of winter wheat growers can attest to the fact that often they've done a quick drive-by their fields, seen everything green up nicely, and then start seeding their spring crops. They go back to their winter wheat crop when they feel it's dried up sufficiently to spread their nitrogen. And then when they're out there spreading their nitrogen, lo and behold, they find all these areas of winter wheat that have died out. And often that is the case. Typically it's from a severe frost after one of these types of springs where we get a rapid warming versus what we're experiencing this year. So again, here's just another picture of what the winter wheat crop looks like. This is our Macbeth site at Crandall. Again, every indication here we see green, the winter wheat crop greening up nicely, so every indication would be that we think this crop is doing well. But that's typically not always the case. After digging up a few plants, you can see here we've got lots of nice green leaf, but we're still not seeing that white shoot of root material coming out of the crown that Pam spoke about earlier. So this would be a plant that still is at risk if we happen to get a hard frost where the leaf material is senesced and we did not have that white shoot or white root growing yet, then this plant could still be at risk to winter kill. This is another field, and again, if you just did a drive-by, you'd say this winter wheat field was in trouble. Right? We're not seeing a lot of green growth here, and but upon more careful examination, when you get down a bit lower, we're starting to see a bit of green growth, some signs of life, and then after digging up some of the plants, we're actually seeing some of that new root growth coming from the crown. So there's going to be a lot of plants in that field that are still going to make it, but it's going to take some careful monitoring to determine whether or not there's going to be sufficient plants to make a stand. So again, those are fields that just have to be monitored closely as this spring progresses. I was going to speak about the bag test, but I think just in the essence of time here, basically the bag test is a process where you dig up some plants, you cut off the shoot and the old roots, you put it in a plastic Ziploc bag, you blow it full of air, and you seal it up, and then you wait 2 to 3, 4 days to examine it for new shoot and root growth. So you can view this video. The site will be, this webinar will be put up on our site so that it can be viewed later, so you can view that. I didn't, just for in the essence of time here, I think we'll skip this part.
I'm not
sure. The snow covers through much of that field, and there's. Go ahead.
Sorry, Elmer. We just lost.
Some winter kill in that particular field. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, the other key is to seed shallow, so that 1 inch maximum depth. And the seeding date, I think, was also important in that last fall we started off our winter wheat seeding season with it again being quite dry as it was in the fall of 2012. So I think that scared a lot of growers off. As we got into the third week of September, we got our first shot of rain, and that's when we started to see a lot of winter wheat go in the ground. So a lot of our winter wheat didn't get much beyond that 2 to 3 leaf stage. So that may have also played a factor in how well developed the ground was prior to freezing. The fall ride demo in South Parkland in the Salzburg area. And I just wanted to conclude by mentioning we are going to proceed with a bit of a field day tomorrow at the Garth Butcher Farm at Salzburg. Garth has some flourish winter wheat growing, and we have Hazlet fall rye, and we're comparing it to this new hybrid fall rye. We're also going to get Scott Day on the phone. Scott used to work with our department, and he's in the U.S., and he's at this point has seen a lot of opportunities for fall rye as a cover crop down in the southern states. So he's going to speak to us about that as well. So if you wanted more information or directions to the farm, just feel free to contact myself at that number below. You can give Lionel a call or Amir. And I think Lionel will have all the contact information on at the conclusion of the webinar. So unless there's any questions, that's all I have, Lionel.
I don't have any questions right now. Lionel?
Okay, thanks, Elmer. I think we're good for questions. Looks like the winter wheat crop in the Southwest is actually doing not too bad. So, Linda, if you want to go back to my screen, I wanted to talk a little bit about one last thing before we end the presentation for today, and just a little bit about wheat streak mosaic. As we're talking about winter wheat, I think wheat streak has been something that we tend to forget about or lose track, especially if we get into busy seeding times. And I was out yesterday afternoon, and I knew this field was winter wheat a couple of years ago, so I kind of went back to it just to see what was going on. Last year the producer had sowed barley on it, and there's a lot of volunteer winter wheat that's coming. So probably last fall this producer had winter wheat in his barley, and it went to seed, and or either that or the seed was dormant in the soil and germinated this spring. So for producers that either have winter wheat or looking to plant a cereal crop on winter wheat that's been in the ground sometimes within the last couple of years, just a little bit of a reminder to make sure you're monitoring your field before you go out there. A field like this would be perfect for the mite to survive over the winter. It would have survived on the winter wheat from last fall. So these plants here that were started to germinate last fall and growing last fall, the mite would have been overwintering on them. We had a good snow cover, so the mite would have made it through the winter. And if the mite is carrying the virus, it would go over onto this year's crop. So if the producer on this field was to grow a cereal crop, and the mite would just go from the winter wheat onto the cereal crop, and that's how the kind of the cycle of the virus keeps going. So again, just another picture of some of the winter wheat plants that are coming through the ground. It wasn't hard to find, so there was a fair bit of winter wheat growing here. And just, a few things to watch for. The disease is a virus, so really there's nothing you can do to spray it. Spray for the disease. It's also carried by the mite that's really small, and because of that, there's no insecticide that you can use to control the disease. The only way you can really control the disease is by forming a green bridge, and I'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide or so. Basically what the disease looks like as the plants start to grow, you get some light green streaking on the leaves, and it's caused by the breakdown of chlorophyll. And then eventually these green streaks turn to yellow and kind of have a pattern of a mosaic. I took these pictures a couple years ago. I had a producer that was in the same situation where he had winter wheat, then canola, then he sowed spring wheat onto those fields, and we were finding wheat streak mosaic all throughout the field. And basically there was volunteer in the canola, and then when he went in the spring, we got into a late spring. They were seeding, and some burn-offs didn't get done in those fields. We definitely were seeing some issues with wheat streak mosaic. And just a quick kind of chart as to how the mite is going to overwinter and then move the infection onto the plants. And I mentioned a little bit about the green bridge. And basically what they mean about the green bridge is to have a break in the time where I showed the pictures of the winter wheats germinating right now. You need to kill those winter wheat plants off, and we need to have at least 7 days with nothing for the mites to live on before the other crop starts growing, and that's your green bridge, where they have nothing to live on, they'll die off, and then the plants that are growing for the crop you planted this year will have a chance of not being infected because there won't be any mites left in the field. So basically the moral of the story there is, if you're going to plant a cereal crop onto a field that had winter wheat in the last year or so, just be out there checking to see if you have any volunteers out there and making sure that the mite isn't there, or making sure that the green plants are there. You're not going to see the mite. It's too small to see, but just if you're making sure your burn off is being done. That's a picture of the mite, and as I mentioned, it's very small, so you're not going to see it. That one was taken under a microscope. And I guess with that, with the wet conditions, I seen this on I guess my Twitter account the other day, so I thought it was kind of neat as to seeing what guys are going to be looking at for spraying. Hopefully we don't need it. Hopefully it's not going to be that wet. But Linda, is there any questions regarding the wheat streak mosaic?
No, I don't have any questions at this time, Lionel.
Okay. I found this also the other day. I thought it was kind of very similar to what Bruce was talking about the difference in the temperatures and the drought situations throughout the U.S. But when you look up into our area, into Manitoba, Saskatchewan here, we're definitely looking at towards a typical year, and they try to figure out what typical is anymore, but in the last few years we've definitely had wet springs, and it looks like we're going into a wet spring again this year. Here's the contact information. So if you've got questions regarding the webinar, or if you would like any more information, there's my contact information, Linda Rickman's contact information, who's the coordinator or helps me coordinate the webinars. And if you're looking for CCA credits or your Certified Crop Science Consultants credits, they're eligible for the webinars, and if you would like them, you do need to get a hold of Linda, and we'll get you your credits. Here is the information that we were talking about earlier on about the FPAs in Southwest and South Parkland. So if you've got some winter wheat fields that we could scout for fusarium, or if you're wanting to get a hold of us regarding any of the meetings or any of your fields for assessment, there's my information. Elmer Kaskiw, he's in the Minnedosa office. Amir Farouk is in Hamiota. And we have an environmental FPA, Andrew Berthold's in Verdun area, and she is also doing some crop stuff as well, so she can definitely be of service as well. And then this is the Manitoba Crops team, and so if you're watching from anywhere else in the province, and you need to get a hold of some of the FPAs regarding any of your cropping issues, don't be afraid to call any of these people. And if they can't help you, they'll probably be able to find the right people for you to talk to. And I think with that, Linda, if there's no questions, we've gone a long webinar, but we had a lot of great information today, so I'd like to thank everybody for attending, and we'll see you next week.